Hello and welcome to Referendum TV, and on the couch today I'm joined by Colin Fox. Welcome, Colin, how are you?
I'm great to be here, thank you.
Yeah.
Enjoying it myself, fine.
Thank you for allotting us some time. I know you've had a busy day. What have you been up to?
Well, today I've had that rare treat. I've been with a Belgian TV crew in Motherwell, showing them round what used to be Ravenscraig and my hometown, and introducing them to voters in Motherwell. So I felt like the king of Motherwell, which is an odd place to be for a Republican, isn't it?
But you're from Motherwell originally.
I'm a Lanarkshire boy, 25 years in Edinburgh, and people say, you're no fair about here, are you? So
that's ironic coming for the Inch. It's this particular place, the Inch.
It is, yeah.
So what do you think the Belgians are making of the referendum?
Well, they're like one of the countries in the world, many countries in the world that are following this with intense interest. They have the national question and part of Belgian politics. Yesterday I was being interviewed by a journalist for the Basque country,
right.
Obviously with the Catalans here. And I think it's safe to say, all humility aside, that the whole world's watching Scotland on Thursday.
It's quite a remarkable phenomenon, isn't it?
Astonishing. I mean, there's TV crews from all over the world here. Tomorrow I'm in Japanese TV. You know, who knows, one day I might even go on the BBC.
Now, the thing about
ambitions.
I don't know, you're watching BBC, pay attention to
yes.
that. The thing about the Japanese, you've got to be really polite.
Do you?
Oh yes,
Right.
you've got to make sure you say
Bow.
yes please and thank, all of that.
Yeah, formally.
Yeah, it's very formal, very structured language. I try
I'll
to learn
practice my bowing tonight when I get home and I'm ready for the morning.
a wee gentle one.
Yeah.
And the fascination is, as I would imagine, the persistence of Britain as an idea throughout the centuries, and the Union Jack and the idea of that has permeated other cultures and countries. And only just recently it seems that they've woken up to that.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing is, I was speaking in Motherwell last night. I make this point in all the speeches. I've, learned a lot of things in the last 2 years. I suppose we all have, haven't we? Focused on a lot of things that you thought were normal and they're absurd, and the things that you thought were unusual need to be the norm. And one of them is, I'll say at meetings, Britain isn't a country. Britain is that rare thing in the world. It's a political union. There aren't too many political unions in the world, Britain's no country. It's made up of 4 countries.
I'm trying to follow this, carry on.
Yeah. Scotland, on the other hand, we are a country. We're a nation. We're not a region or a province of anywhere else. And that sounds like profound, but it's actually, I say it to people and people go, do you know what, that's absolutely right. We're being sold the idea that we're doing something unusual on Thursday. Very unusual. Self-determination, that'll never catch on, But in fact, Scotland is saying, we're going to stand alongside 280 other countries in the world.
So our normal historically has been abnormal. That's what
correct, yeah. Well, political unions, it's not the norm in the world today, and that's I think Britain is a peculiarity.
What else have you discovered? What else that would seemingly have been absurd at once upon a time have you began to realise is just normal? What other aspects?
Well, today I'm in Motherwell. I grew up in Motherwell. It's a Labour town. I used to say the only people I knew in Motherwell growing up that didn't vote Labour voted Communist.
Right.
But what we're seeing in this referendum campaign is they're now suggesting that 40+% of Labour supporters are going to be voting for independence on Thursday, and at the centre of that, there's a perception that supporting self-determination doesn't make you a nationalist. It makes you a Democrat.
That's a frame that the Better Together campaign have been trying to force upon yes voters, that somehow you're endorsing the wilder excesses of nationalism in terms of conflated with racism and genetic determinism, all that side of things. And it's something that a lot of us, including myself, have shut and worked hard not to take on. Can you say a wee bit more about the international nature of our civic nationalism?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say though is I think they're lazy. The BBC do it all the time. They talk about the nationalists, the nationalists, the nationalists. I'm not a nationalist. Never have been. I'm a socialist. I'm a trade unionist. I'm an internationalist. I support independence in the same way that John Maclean did, the leader of the Red Clydesiders 100 years ago. In the same way that James Connolly did from this city. The most famous socialist Edinburgh has ever given to the world after me. Died. He was executed by the British in 1916 for supporting the Dublin Rising. James Connolly was a passionate advocate for independence. Neither Maclean nor James Connolly would be considered nationalists. Nobody who knows anything about them would ever thus describe them.
Maybe you can take make a wee bit of time here today to explain how their socialism would be manifested through the state of Scotland.
Yeah, because socialists believe the world is divided into classes. There's the rich and the poor, there's the exploiters and there's the exploited. That's the nature of the world we see. People aren't defined by their nationality. And socialists believe that all over the world, working class people have a very common bond.
Yeah.
We get up in the morning, we go to work and we sell our labour on an hourly basis so that we can pay our rent, put food on the table, buy shoes for our kids. That's a common experience regardless of whether you're Chinese, Argentinian, Scottish, African. That's what we share in common. Or English, indeed, right. And so that's how we see the world. But we also, I would say, I'm nothing if not a Democrat. Socialists have got to learn and have learned. Democracy is a very powerful thing. I'm a democratic socialist. I've stood in more elections and lost than I've won. In fact, I've only ever won the one. But, you know...
Talk us through that a wee bit later on.
Yes, we'll come back to that. But the fact is, this is a democratic question on Thursday. It's about saying Scotland is a nation, it's a country. We're therefore entitled of right to determine our own future. That's the self-determination of nations, which is a long-held-for principle. That means that you democratically aspire to having your own decisions taken by yourself and your own entity. I think that's fundamental for Democrats. It's certainly fundamental for socialists.
So in places like Galicia, the Basque Country, in the two parts of Belgium, the Flames and the Walloons, and in Catalonia, why is it the larger state, the successor state, would-be successor states such as Spain or RUK as it's called just now, why is it they're so worried by potentially these parts of their state becoming separate? What's the
I think the two reasons are, first of all, they're lessened by that outcome. You know, RUK will be lessened as an entity, less powerful, less prosperous. It's less of an entity altogether if it loses part of itself. And also I think, and you picked on, you know, the Basque Country, Catalonia, for Spain. These are very wealthy parts of Spain. These are rich and prosperous communities, nations, and the idea that they should determine their own future frightens Spain because it'll be less than it has just now. And I think Britain, we've argued in the Yes campaign successfully in the last 2 years that, of course, Scotland is a very wealthy part of the UK. We're a wealthy country. We contribute far more in taxes and wealth into the UK exchequer than we get back.
That's one of the myths that's been burst by this process, isn't it?
I believe so. I think Alistair Darling, Anis Sarwar, Joanne Lamont, all this, they argue that Scotland gets £1,200 more in public services, you know, per head of the population than England and Wales GDP, you know, considered in that level. But what they don't let on is, of course, but we pay for that. We put far more taxes into the pot than we get out. And the higher GDPs to reflect the fact that, of course, Scotland is much less densely populated than England. Our populations in the Western Isles and the Highlands and the borders, we refuse to leave them to the winds and leave them to the devil take the hindmost. We want to have adequate utilities, proper public transport provision in these areas, and of course it's more costly to run a line to Inverness and to make sure that there's airports in Stornoway and Barra and things like that.
There's a theme I want to pick up in terms of difference. In your international socialism, you see class structures as being where the power plays out. So when you get the ONS that says actually Scottish opinion isn't that different from English, what's your perspective on that?
It's not true, and all the evidence shows it's not true. Now, you can like that or you can lump it, but there's many examples we can point to. I'll give you a couple. 2010, the Labour Party is kicked out of Westminster and on a British basis replaced by two parties to its right, the Tories and the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
In Scotland, roll on 12 months, we have elections here in 2012 for our Parliament, and the Labour Party has again rejected Ian Gray and his programme and manifesto by a party demonstrably to its left. The SNP are neoliberal in economic terms, just like Labour and the Tories and the Liberals, but on social policy they're to the left of Labour. I congratulated Nicola Sturgeon for abolishing prescription charges. That was a good thing. The SSP, as you know, pioneered that bill in the Scottish Parliament. The things they do, the SNP, on social policy are left of centre. So there's an illustration that as Britain as a whole is an entity in the grip often of neoliberal, right-wing, UKIP, xenophobic, anti-immigrant policies that Scotland has repeatedly rejected. And I think in Scotland we've got a democratic, social democratic and socialist political centre of gravity.
Billy Bragg picked up on the radicalisation of the left that a pro-independence, a pro-yes vote would have.
Mm-hmm.
There are some, though, within the left that still maintain there's minimal differences, that the traditional welder in Glasgow's got more in common with a welder in Liverpool than a farmer up in the Highlands has with somebody from the Central Belt. Can you address that for us?
Yeah, I respect that point of view, but it's not accurate anymore. First of all, how many welders are there in Glasgow? My granda was a welder with the Lanarkshire Welding Company at Ravenscraig. They're all gone. Of course, working people in Glasgow have an awful lot in common with working people in Liverpool, Newcastle, Bradford, Lothian, Sheffield, London, where I stayed. Of course that's true, and it'll still be true on Friday. We also have a great deal in common, just as much in common with workers in Buenos Aires and Johannesburg and Beijing and wherever else you like to choose.
It's used as, go on, sorry, Colin.
No, on you go.
It's used as a sort of weapon to attack, as if you're somehow selfish. That, that you put it as a national frame at the Scottish level rather than at the British level. And I've got I lived in London for 17 years, so I've got a lot of friends down there, and I'm saying, well, we'll still be pals.
Of course, exactly. And the thing is, this is essentially about, we stand in solidarity. We are brothers and sisters in trade union language. That's how we address each other. We people and workers in those communities, of course, and we will continue to do so, just as we'll continue to work and stand in solidarity with workers the rest of the world. However, the fact is, in Britain, it's nigh on impossible to show any meaningful solidarity with workers anywhere else in these isles, because Thatcher brought in the worst anti-trade union laws in the whole of Europe, and Blair went even further. Not only did Labour refuse to rescind these vicious anti-trade union laws that prevent workers, welders in Glasgow showing any kind of solidarity with striking welders in Liverpool or Newcastle, he went even further. And quite frankly, I think they're an affront to the social democratic values in Scotland. People here are in favour of unions. We want public ownership. We're in favour of redistribution of wealth. See that all around you. The SNP government, for example. I'm one of its biggest critics when I don't think it's gone far enough. But they took into public ownership Prestwick Airport 3 months ago. I mean, Cameron and the Labour Party's attitude is, let it rot, let the grass go up the runway, we don't care, that's market forces. And the Scottish Government rightly took the view that's an asset to this country, it's part of our infrastructure, and we're damned if we're going to see it go to rot and ruin. We're going to protect it until we get somebody else to take it on board. We'll ensure that those jobs are protected and that asset remains. Now that's surely the right thing to do.
Absolutely. If we come to the Labour vote that's drifted and then sort of avalanche towards yes, they would have had that perspective historically about the welders and what have you. But why is it you think they've moved to yes en masse, as they're currently doing?
Because I think at its core they see the Yes campaign protecting traditional Labour values. The leadership has abandoned them. They're trying to make this contest tribal. They go to Labour voters, I've seen them doing it in the last 2 years, thousands of times. They go to Labour voters and they say, this is all about Alex Salmond. It's a beauty contest. If you don't like him, vote no. And frankly, that's simplistic and it's an insult to the electorate, whereas almost 50% of Labour voters are saying, do you know what, we looked at Yes Scotland and I remember Labour used to stand for those same values. We wouldn't allow the privatisation of the NHS. We wouldn't have tried nuclear weapons. We'd ensure there was full employment, proper wages, trade union protection, all the positive social democratic messages that Yes have put out there. And all they get for Labour is, that'll no work, that's a threat to your livelihood, that's backward looking, leave it, wait till Ed Miliband gets in, wait for a Labour government. And the trouble is, people have said, wait for a Labour government.
You don't believe that's going to happen?
We had 3 of them and they were rubbish. They put us back even more. We had Blair 3 times. We had Gordon Brown. We're supposed to wait on Ed Miliband and he's promising 90% of the cuts to the Tories.
And you think Ed Miliband's cut from the same cloth as Blair and Brown?
Of course he is. He's a policy wonk. I've seen the guy. He doesn't impress me. He doesn't put any sense that he's got any values that aren't up for sale. Exactly the same as Blair. Exactly the same as Kinnock before that. I left the Labour Party when they decided to send in sheriff officers in Scotland after people who couldn't pay the poll tax. Neil Kinnock's view was, this is the law. The poll tax is a law. Yes, it's an unjust law. Yes, they're asking people who've no got the money to pay £1,600 in poll tax, but you've got to do it.
How much is this? I mean, as you see, you mentioned that totemic phrase, the poll tax, that produces all kinds of reactions in people. And I was actually at the poll tax riot in Trafalgar Square.
So was that?
inadvertently, I just come from a Leeds West Ham game,
Right.
so I walked into it, which was quite an astonishing phenomenon. What I was going to say, though, to what extent is where we are now a legacy of that being imposed here and the Thatcher years? Because it certainly seems to produce powerful reactions in lots of people.
Well, it's one of the most important ingredients in this cake. I mean, the irony is that Thatcher, in her way, has brought us to where we are today. Thatcher used Scotland as a laboratory, a social and economic laboratory. Let's introduce this poll tax, this idea that Keith Joseph came up with, a flat rate tax. The dustbin man pays the same as the Duke.
That was the instigation of Lord Forsyth. He suggested Scotland as a lab, didn't he, at that time?
I believe so. They thought there was nothing to lose. Let's try it in Scotland. This might be absolute madness, but we'll try it in Scotland. Turned out it was madness. And what happened is, I mean, Margaret Thatcher died, was it last year or that? And I watched the programmes. I sat there and go, you know, these legends that Geoffrey Howe brought her down, or backbench Tories, are worthy of Hans Christian Andersen. What brought down Thatcher was 16 million people refusing to pay that poll tax. I never paid it. And I was one of the leaders of the anti-poll tax union that said anybody in Scotland who's threatened with sheriff officers or pinned in a warrant sale, there'll be hundreds of people standing in the front garden.
It was Poindings, wasn't it?
Poindings, yeah, they called it pronounced Pindings, but it was written Poindings. Of course, we abolished them in the Scottish Socialist Party with others in the Scottish Parliament. One of the first bills that Parliament passed was to abolish them. They are no more. You can't have that kind of humiliation of the poor anymore, and that's a good thing that the Parliament's achieved. But Thatcher's legacy, of course, is wiped out Ravenscraig, wiped out Bathgate, you know, the factory there, wiped out Linwood, closed all the pits, shipyards, all these kind of things.
So I can feel the proclaimers rising at the back of my head and start to sing Letter to America.
But the irony was, she was damned if she'd have a Scottish Parliament. And we had one. It was a direct consequence of her treatment of us. Mm-hmm. We thought, that'll never happen again. And it's the continual treatment of her, then Major, then Blair, and Cameron. People in Scotland are saying, look, we've got to bring this to an end. We're the subjects of policies we don't support. Bedroom tax being the most...
Exactly. It's odd when you list those names there, because John Major, at least, he was the guy that got in the soapbox first, I remember. And he said, watch out, the union is in peril.
Yes.
The union is in peril.
Yes.
But there was an authenticity, there's a sort of bonkers authenticity about it, that he was believable.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't get the same from the Blairites that continue to this present day. It doesn't seem as if Ed fights with tooth and claw for Scotland.
No, Ed will fight tooth and claw for the corporate interests in the City of Westminster and City of London, just the same way as Cameron and Clegg do, you know. But I had to laugh there that they mention John Major's, you know, ginger beer, you know, iron brew crate standing. We've got Jim Murphy doing the same thing in the Rathlock in Stirling, standing in a ginger beer crate or iron brew crate, giving it speak to ordinary people, right? You know.
Well, he's shouting at ordinary people.
Yeah, but you know, it's a desperate attempt to say, oh, this is going to be an effective means of communication, right? It's just ridiculous. And of course, Major, you know, he lost badly to Blair, didn't he? Got trounced.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah, so I suspect that'll be the same outcome for Jim Murphy.
He won when he took over from Thatcher, when she got ousted, and then he subsequently lost.
Yeah, he won, but remember 1992 election, Kinnock famously snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. That's what they said, you know.
Oh, yeah.
As that big Sheffield rally. But I famously remember that night, the Thursday night, I was down in Liverpool helping a Labour MP, Terry Fields, get elected, and we left the polling station at 10, popped into the house to get changed before we went to Garston Railway Workers Club to watch the results coming in. And the 10 o'clock news said, Kinnock wins, Labour majority, Kinnock wins. Half an hour later, 10:30, 11, we get to Garston Labour Club and they're saying, looks like a hung parliament. And of course by 3 in the morning, Major won it by a narrow majority.
Yeah.
And it was ultimately because people didn't trust Kinnock. They didn't trust him. Neil Kinnock had personified this idea. He comes to your door, hi, I'm Neil Kinnock, hope I can rely on your vote for Labour on Thursday. And people say, what do you stand for? Well, he says, these are my policies. But if you don't like them, I'll change them.
Right. So you reckon it was a loss of value that's been part of it?
It was just a prostitute who'd sell you anything.
Before I want to come on to the actual nature of the campaign, I just want to stay with the legacy of Thatcher, how it's manifested in Cameron, Osborne and all the rest of the chaps who tend to occupy the cabinet table in Downing Street.
Yeah.
And in terms of the policy wonks that once were spads, that are now occupying offices within the shadow cabinet.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
I don't think, you know, these are people who formulate policies without any connection to real life.
Right.
You know, so it comes across, and it's synthetic. It's not constructed. And what is the reality of people in Motherwell who have been this morning? These are people in low-paid, insecure employment with worries about their future, living day to day, often hand to mouth, who the bedroom tax is a kick in the teeth, but it's simply the latest kick in the teeth. And who comes up with the bedroom tax as an idea? Some Eton educated policy wonk who's a millionaire for the Bullingdon Club, No contact with reality, no perception whatsoever that the overwhelming majority of people in this country do not have that opportunity, background, that kind of wealth behind them,
Is that
contempt.
It's an interesting view, because I remember them coming up, the Labour MPs coming up to Glasgow, and that brilliant guy in the tricycle,
Brilliant. Star Wars, Darth Vader,
bowed down to your imperial masters, and it did have that feel to it. He put that frame in it, which was a lovely frame to put in it, and some of them were very angry. But the day visit by Osborne was it March?
February, I think, when he came up to announce the currency.
In Bread Street in Edinburgh, and he shunned the STV political editor at the time, Bernard Ponsonby. What was your view on the impact of actions like that, or the day tripping last week of the three?
It just shows you how out of touch. There are 100 Labour MPs arrive in Glasgow and they're ridiculed because they don't understand that the average I think this is widespread across Britain. They take the view Westminster is totally out of touch with our reality. These are people who have been fiddling millions for the public purse, right? Who are aghast at the idea that we should be outraged about it. We can't do a thing about it. We couldn't deselect any of them.
Colin, some people would say a duck house is essential.
The duck, probably, but not a human being, right? Doubtless the duck that was sitting in the moat said it was essential too, right? But
that's
that's the extent of Westminster is loathed and hated. I mean, I read reading about the English Civil War and Cromwell in that period of time, because I'm in favour of a modern democratic republic. I like to study that period of history when Britain was a republic for 20 years, Cromwell's time, and they get rid of the king and there was a Commonwealth and stuff like that. And at that time, there was groups there, political activists at the time, who were arguing for annual elections to Westminster, so that if Mr Big with his duck pond or his moat and his fiddling expenses and his three houses corrupt is caught with his fingers in the till, you can say, bye, get out, you're finished. We have to wait 5 years before we can touch any of these people. They're on salaries that are in the stars as far as most working people are concerned. They were caught, and you didn't have to even provide a receipt for anything below 250 quid. So you can say, I bought something the other day there, cost me 249.99. You just have to take my word for it, right? It's just absolutely contemptuous. The MPs that were getting caught, he claiming 50 pence a mile for driving around their constituencies. He didn't even have a car, didn't even have a driving licence, banned for driving.
It wouldn't survive on it.
So Westminster is a name of ridicule and contempt, isn't it?
Yeah.
So imagine your ordinary Glaswegian. Hey, Colin, come see this. There's 100 MPs coming from Westminster. And you go, where's the rotten fruit? Where is the rotten fruit?
That was a modern equivalent, the Darth Vader tune, the Imperial March. That was a modern equivalent.
Fantastic. And that's the wit of Glaswegians, isn't it? Their humour in Glasgow is fantastic. Bring people down to earth with a bang. Don't come up here with your pomposity and say to us you're somehow better, Away back homewards and think again,
Absolutely, and I think, will they think again, Phil? Will they write this off? Here's an interesting question.
They'll think again, don't you worry about that.
Think so?
Oh, Dad. I mean, they remember they've come up here, and they didn't, the week before, the month before, they had no intentions of coming. They were assured, they were sitting in London going, referendum, boring, we've won it by a mile, get on with it, get back to talk to something important. And all of a sudden, it's on a knife edge. Alistair, what the hell are you doing? You promised us this was over. Now we've got to go up to Glasgow on the train. 5 hours on the train. I've got better things to do than go up in Virgin Media. We'll probably never get there. Well, is there electricity when we get there? Will there be anything to plug in my laptop? It's pathetic.
So this is sort of metropolitan elite visits the provinces. And you think there's the revolt in the provinces is against that?
They were instructed to be there. How many of them volunteered? You know what I mean?
Not many. They'd have been whipped into it, yeah.
Farcical.
I suppose I want to come on to the nature of the campaign. We talked there about Thatcher and the poll tax, and maybe even prior to that, certainly Jim on Friday was talking about... Jim Sillars on Friday was talking about the difficulties in 79, whereas now we have social media. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of leading the question there, but what do you think is the difference in this campaign that we've been able to sustain, in the face of the media and broadcasters' onslaught?
Well, I think Yes campaign has been a joy to be part of for 2 years. I mean, I'm probably the only person in Scotland who'd like this to go on for another 2 years. It's been fantastic, you know what I mean?
Seriously?
Well, you know, not quite seriously, but it's been brilliant to be part of. It's been a joy. I mean, I've worked with Jim Sillars really closely, and Jim's able to tell you about the 1979 referendum that we won and then lost. He tells you about the 1997 election, or the referendum when they get 2 questions. So he's a fountain of wisdom. He's been fantastic. He's 78. He's running about Scotland as if he's 18. I phone him every day and he tells me Margot Mobiles and shots. The next day he's down in Kilwinning in Ayrshire. He's away. You know, he's fantastic. He puts life into everybody.
But how's he going to cope with that drug addiction to Strepsils?
You know, he goes and does a meeting and he's in 3 Strepsils a day to keep his voice. He's doing all these meetings and
does 12.
But he's an inspiration.
Exactly. He does 12 talks a day from the Margot Mobile. I mean, I had the pleasure of working for Margot, just doing a wee bit of canvassing with Jim about the last election to Parliament. And I remember he was convincing Margot he was having a bit of a wobble in terms of the vote that would come in for her. And he was very confident. He seems to be very confident of the vote on this occasion. What's your view?
Well, I mean, I speak to Jim, and Jim has been, you know, he's got a great deal more experience than me. And I think I look at the meetings he does, and he's amazing because he's 78. And the people there are a quarter of his age, and they're inspired by him. You know, Margot was the same. She was an inspiring figure because she was honest, she was straightforward, she spoke the language you understood, no airs or graces. She never came across as MD who was superior to you or say, I've been around for 50 years, you'll learn, wee laddie, or that. They're brilliant. They're encouraging people to get involved in it. And the point I was going to make about Yes Scotland is we started out 2 years ago, and it was the Scottish Socialist Party, the SNP, the Greens, and others. And all these were, you know, renowned journalists, wise men, at Fountain Bridge when it was launched. That'll no last. The Scottish Socialist Party's for a republic, the SNP isn't it? The Greens don't want the oil to be taken out of the North Sea because they're environmentalists, they don't have anything in common, blah, blah, that'll never work, they'll be at each other's throat, right? Wrong. Big style wrong. Between us, we understood that the key to the door to all those things we each wanted to achieve was a yes vote on September 18th.
So and we've been able to subdue things like that.
I've thoroughly enjoyed sharing platforms with Jim Sillars, with Nicola Sturgeon, Patrick Harvey, all the friends and allies across Scotland. In a way, never seen Alistair Darling sharing platforms with the Tories, you know, the Liberals and all that. Well,
he did share one with Gordon Brown just recently. It was quite a remark.
That's true, yeah.
That's naughty.
But the Yes Coalition has decided for the very outset. We knew the media would be against us. And we thought, you don't need them. Of course the BBC will be against us. The clue is in the name. It's the British Broadcasting Corporation.
So you're not remotely surprised by people's reaction, by how they've conducted themselves in this campaign?
The BBC?
Yeah.
I'm disgusted. I'm horrified. They've stooped to levels I thought even they would never fall to.
What are you talking about? I'm not surprised. Give me examples.
Well, you see Nick Robinson, it's editorialising when they're supposed to be journalists. They're supposed to report the news. But they're editorialising when they're behind the desk presenting the news, you know. Their whole attitude's been contemptuous, and there's been no at least attempt to be even-handed. Yes gets a chance to make its case, no gets a chance to make its case. But I have to say to you, for me, the BBC's never been held in lower regard in my lifetime. You know, the scandals that the BBC has plainly covered up, the loss of their impartiality and the idea they're there to neutrally serve the news and to provide the public with information. They implicated in the Levinson inquiry with the cover-up there. I think the BBC's got huge problems. They're ongoing. They'll not be solved by Thursday.
Yeah.
But I expected them to be totally behind the No campaign. And we've seen in the last 10 days as the No campaign is panicked, the BBC is panicking all the time. It's news, you know. They announce one thing, they announce another. It's all devised to buttress the No campaign, but it's too late. They left it too late.
You believe it's too late, and I suppose Jim Sillars' point of view was that now in '79 they didn't have social media, and now we have social media.
Yeah.
Do you put much store by that, or do you put store by Rick's door-to-door canvassing, the Greens door-to-door canvassing?
Well, we do door-to-door canvassing, the Scottish. I mean, I think social media is fantastic. I use it. I mean, it's a godsend really for activists like me, because nowadays we don't have to be spending 180 quid on 5,000 leaflets. You don't need paper leaflets anymore.
Right.
I mean, we tend to use them when we feel we need them. But you tweet, Facebook, you put it out there, and you now know that there's thousands, tens of thousands of people in localities who are going to see it. They can choose to come to the meetings and participate in activity if they want to. But you can now be more confident that the ability to communicate far more easily, and in this case, relatively freely and cheaply, is a godsend for activists. So I think the Yes campaign's use of social media has been fantastic, at least insofar as comparing it to the other side.
Yeah, it seems to win hands down.
So they can have the Daily Record and we'll have Twitter. They can have, the Daily Telegraph and we'll have Facebook. And you've seen the emergence, an energised campaign, the biggest grassroots political campaign Scotland's ever seen in its life is here, Scotland.
I was speaking to someone yesterday, Anna Sassan, and we were talking about that the period from the issue of something that's frightening to the actual rebuttal. No, it's Kevin Wilson I was talking to, but the grassroots gather, they sort of collect themselves and then they come back.
That's right.
And they disabuse people of the notion that come say there's going to be a terrifying thing, and they reassure.
Absolutely.
It's quite a remarkable
Look at the role that Bella Caledonia, Wings Over Scotland, the Radical Independence Campaign, the Scottish Socialist Party, Women for Independence, you could go on, have played in that rebuttal exercise. And we've all learned that their threats, it's the law of diminishing returns. The more they threat, the less of an impact it has. And now you just expect a threat. They came out last week and they said Kim Il-sung from North Korea's for a yes vote, and everybody just guffaws and you think, next some medium will be in touch with Hitler and he'll come out for a yes vote. You know what I mean?
Please, folks,
don't want to give them ideas.
Don't take that as a valid idea.
It's just farcical, you know. And it's like threat. It's like they just don't work anymore. And I think that whole sense of people expect.
Just getting the message in. That's William Wallace saying vote yes.
Oh, there's a surprise then. I'd have as good as I don't know. Just on the basis he was dead. Is he on the register?
I have no idea. I'm sure Rick's and SSP would have got him on the register if he was available.
I'm sure there are plenty of William Wallaces.
I'm sure there are. In terms of the collegiate nature of the campaign with all the different interest groups and parties, who have you seen emerge that's a standout for you? Who's really impressed you?
On the yes side?
Yeah.
I have to say, I surprise you with this. I think Business for Scotland have played an absolute captain's innings. Can I say that without sounding like a cricketer?
You can see what a captain's innings is if you want.
Well, I think they've been great. I think they've been fantastic because we also anticipated that the big corporations, it was probably no surprise to anybody that Standard Life were going to come out and oppose it, right? The big corporations that are based here in Edinburgh, the oil companies, the vested interests, the ones in the background who really run the country because they've got all the money, and Business for Scotland have undermined them completely by saying, well, they big corporations, look at all the small businesses where people actually work for. They are going to be far better served by an independent Scotland.
I was a member of Business of Scotland. I need to declare that interest.
Right. And I only say that because the Scottish Socialist Party and Business for Scotland would not be seen as natural peas in a pod, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's the front page being prepared right now. It's Colin Fox endorses Business for Scotland.
And I'm sure they'd be saying the same at the Scottish Socialist Party because they're that generous.
We'll look forward to that coverage on their website shortly. I think you're right. It's been very interesting. What's the guy's Kemp? What's the
Gordon.
Gordon, his suits or something else.
Yeah, he's got a double barrel name, but doesn't ever do Business for Scotland,
Well, apart from Kevin Robertson.
That'll emerge.
And who else has got your eye in terms
the Radical Independence Campaign? For me, that's been the other sensation of this campaign. The Scottish Socialist Party's involved in it. I know you had Jonathan Shafi on your programme before and all that. They've been fantastic. 2 great conferences, really uplifting in Glasgow last year and the year before. The Radical Independence Campaign, out round the doors in the schemes of Scotland with the Scottish Socialist Party and others, been great and really take enormous credit. They wouldn't claim it for themselves, that would be daft.
No, they're very humble.
Credit for getting those unregistered, that missing million, so many of them voting on Thursday. And I think that's what the left has brought here. And the First Minister has been good enough to recognise that the Scottish Socialist Party, Radical Independence Campaign, the Greens, etc., have been able to take the campaign, the independence movement, and refresh those parts that perhaps the SNP can't reach.
So a Heineken approach.
Yeah, Heineken. I don't know if they're back in independence, but that's
we'll
their
take
approach.
it.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
So the Radical Independence Campaign, another huge success.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a point very well made. In terms of where we stand just now at whatever time it is, Jim Saylor said that most people will have decided by Tuesday. So say there's some that haven't, and this goes out at 8 o'clock. What would you say, if you want to address the camera directly, what would you say to them right now to persuade the teeterers and the waverers to actually plump for yes?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Motherwell today and I met people who said they don't know and they're not going to make up their mind until they walk down the path and into the polling station. And I think that's a good thing in a way, because it means they're inured to all the negativity and their sense that there's still hope there, right? And I really expect that when you make that journey to the polling station, you're aware that the whole country is doing the same thing, and there's a sense that you can vote to keep things as they are. The path will remain the same. You'll have the same journey out of the polling station as you had in. Whereas if you vote yes, you're going to have a different journey out of the polling station. You know, the world that you look at when you come out the polling station is altogether fresher, newer, a world full of possibilities. And I hope that people, if you've gone in there thinking you're I don't know, come out having voted yes and promise yourself that you're going to be able to say on Friday, when Scotland votes for independence and votes yes, I did that, I changed the world like everybody else. And I think that's a better feeling you're going to have than if you come out and voted no to keep things as they are.
As you're speaking there, the words of Robert Frost, I came to a fork in the road and I chose the road less travelled by, came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more or less what's being asked of yes voters on this occasion. Mm-hmm. You've got a familiar path, but on this occasion perhaps you could choose a different one to safeguard the NHS and to open up possibilities in an independent Scotland.
Yeah.
What I want to just do now, Colin, in the final part of the interview, is move towards the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we went live, you were talking about the potential no if there's a yes vote. So I want you to start with a no vote. If there's a no vote first, then what happens?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, I think, as far as predictions are concerned, everybody's making them. My feeling now, before the vote, is it's on a knife edge. And I've said to all the yes campaigners that I meet with, and I think it's the yes' central message, we get our vote out, we'll win this. If they get their vote out and we don't, they're going to win it. That's
right.
How close it is. So, but in the event there's a no vote, this is inevitably asked. And my feeling is, I seen the First Minister, Alex Salmond, saying this in Sunday, I think, in the Andrew Marr programme, and entirely concur, where he said, a vote on Thursday is a vote between those who are going to vote for independence now and those who are going to defer it. Because for me, this campaign has shown the inevitability of independence. It's coming yet, for all that, as Burns said. The great fear and anxiety, the Yes Scotland campaign, was a Quebec outcome. You know, in Quebec 20 years ago, they had a referendum for Quebec's independence from Canada, and the Yes side lost it by a hair's breadth, less than 1%. And it set them back 25 years because it demoralised them. They came so close and they were disappointed with all the energy they'd put into it and the resources, etc. And for the last 2 years, I think that's been our nightmare scenario. And yet, now that we're virtually there, it's not a nightmare because...
Well, you want to carry on for another 2 years.
No, but, well, there's that. But I think the truth is, it's not like Quebec, because we've never had support for independence above 35% before. So we've added huge capacity to this. It's not comparable with Quebec. If we lose, we're only going to just lose. And my view is, they say in Italy, la lotta continua. The struggle continues. So if we don't get independence on Thursday, we're going to get it next time. And that great sage, Jim Sillars, pointed out to me, there is a Scottish Parliament election in 17-18 months' time, May 2016. And Jim's view, which I think is wise, is if we don't win this referendum on Thursday, then that becomes the independence election. Because Thursday's about getting a mandate, and you don't just get a mandate through referenda. You can have it through elections, you can have it through various different means.
Right.
And we move on and say this has become very close, we just lost it, if we did we have. Then we make 2016 the independence elections, and we say to people,
continue.
If you vote for the SSP, if you vote for the SNP, if you vote for the Greens, be clear, this is a vote for independence, and if we get a majority of these three parties, we will immediately sit down and negotiate terms of Scotland's independence with London. You know, that's
good, because there was a train of thought that would say that we would turn to despair and turn in ourselves. And you know, for me personally, I didn't like the idea of that, because what's been mobilised here has been tremendous, and it'd be a shame that if there was a very slim no vote, it'd be a shame to turn that tap of energy off.
Well, I think, if we don't get a yes vote, you're entitled to disappointment. Of course, that's natural. We're human beings. We put a lot into this. We don't want to lose. We want to win. You're natural to be disappointed. But despair's a luxury. We don't have the luxury of despair. We've got an argument to win, a vote to win, And millions of poor people in Scotland are relying on a yes vote on Thursday. That's the truth of it. This is a vote between progress, redistribution of wealth, helping those who need help the most, which is a yes vote, and the status quo, which says, don't give a monkeys about you, devil take the hindmost, let the City of London have all the spoils of the country.
So you don't think the new powers are much...
They're piddling, they're insignificant, they're a nonsense, they're cobbled together at the last minute to try and persuade a Devo Max constituency that in February we had this debate. That debate was lost by the no campaign, right? So, and those are the circumstances of a no vote on Thursday.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's just turn to the circumstances and the outcome of a yes vote.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts? What would happen?
Well, I have to say on balance we're ahead of it. It's on a knife edge. I think it's more like there'll be a yes vote.
So like the rest?
I think there'll be a yes vote on Thursday. I think it'll be narrow.
Uh-huh.
I know Jim's got a margin of 10% and I hope he's right, but I sincerely think it's going to be narrower than that. But my feeling is, I think there's a narrow yes victory going to come.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first hand you say, democracy is democracy. One vote, the majority will must be implemented,
yep.
you know, and we're all obliged. I mean, we're all obliged, regardless of the result, to respect the result.
Absolutely.
So if there's a no vote, we are obliged as yes campaigners to respect the wishes of the Scottish people, as demonstrated in that referendum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for the no side in the event of a yes vote. So we have to recognise and respect the result, and then we have to go and do as best we can to implement it and make sure it happens. And I think there are many talented, resourceful people in the no side of this debate. They're very good people. They love their country as much as anybody else. They take a different view from us. On Friday we have to offer them the olive branch and say, okay, we understand that you lost, you're on the winning side. The socialists would probably offer them more sympathy than most, right?
Because you're familiar with that experience.
Yeah, we've been there many more times probably than them. And you say, we've got to make this work. And we offer them an olive branch. Yeah, and we say, we're going to now implement the decision and take you with us. We want the kind of Scotland that we surely all want to see. And if this debate's about anything, it's surely an argument that says this, our view to the objectives we want is via independence. The best people in the no side are saying we share those objectives, we just think the route is where we are Westminster.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then it's easier to come them together.
As you know, we're doing a live broadcast from here. It's from 10 o'clock to whenever the result comes through, which is expected to be 6 a.m.
About then, yeah.
And then might go for breakfast. During that period, what do you think will begin to happen if it begins to show for yes? What would be the immediate implications in terms of party leaders, policy, in terms of policy down in London? What would happen? Bank of England, settling the market's nerves, that kind of thing. What do you think the implications are for party leaders in Scotland?
Well, this is a very unusual question for us in Scotland because we're usually quite calm and we don't like melodrama too much and all that. But it's safe to say Scotland's not the same place on Friday. It's utterly changed. You know, WB Yeats changed utterly. Things are utterly changed in Scotland when it's an independent country. None of the circumstances we find here on Tuesday apply on Friday. You know, the Labour Party is completely different on Friday.
Tell me why. Tell me
I
what
think
happens
all
then.
the political parties are changed on Friday. The Labour Party on Friday, you know, the people of Scotland have voted and they voted for independence, and so the Labour Party no longer is a British Labour Party, it must become the Scottish Labour Party. In effect, it's been forced to say, we now organising in a different country. And so the consequences are, in a way, I mean, Kevin Williamson, who you've had on your programme, makes the point very well. That could be liberating for the Labour Party in Scotland. Many people have argued they've paid a terrible price for being tied to London Labour, whose focus is on the M4 corridor. You know, the middle England, middle class agenda of privatisation and warmongering and devil take the hindmost economic policy. That could be a revelation for Labour. The first thing, Labour's in a bit of a crisis because I think personally there'll be great pressure on Joanne Lamont to resign. There'll be a leadership bid, all those kind of things. The Labour parties, that's their internal business, and I don't.
So okay, but if exploring it from a yes point of view, if yes prevails, you would imagine Joanne Lamont would have to resign.
Yeah.
What about Ed Miliband?
I think his position's pretty much untenable. I mean, if the Labour Party has argued that there can't be a Labour government if we vote yes, then, and you've lost 49 Labour MPs, and he's already behind in the polls, and Miliband's been up here, and
1% he's behind.
Yeah, but he should be far ahead, and the Tories have got 6 months to go before they give away budgets and all those kind of carry-ons. It's murder position for him to be in. And let's be honest, the Unionist campaign in Scotland hasn't been led by Cameron and the Tories or the Liberals, who are both hated here. It's been by Labour, and it's a rejection of Miliband. So I think the Labour Party's profound process of metamorphosis is clear on Friday, and really that I think that's a given. You'd also have to say, inside the Scottish National Party on Friday, if the SNP's objective is to achieve independence, and we just appeared it on Thursday, lots of people, really good people, I really respect them, in the last 2 years have said to me, I'm in the Scottish National Party, I'm a socialist, once we get independence, I'm with you guys. And the independence for the SNP, remember, is its raison d'etre.
Yeah, absolutely.
They get it. Then maybe the left and the right of the SNP decide to be in right and left parties.
That'll be after they've celebrated for a few days.
Yeah, sure. And my attitude is you're welcome. You're welcome. Labour, people in the Labour Party or Labour supporters who've concluded that's not a socialist party, they're welcome to join the SSP. So is people in the SNP. Anybody, if you're a socialist in Scotland, you should be in a socialist party. That's my view.
And what of the Tories?
Tories, well, I think
the implications of a yes vote for the Tories. What happens?
David Cameron cries all weekend, doesn't he? He cries all weekend. He's been up here crying. He'll probably cry at Chequers. I think the Tories across Britain of that profound sense of loss, won't they? For them, they consider Britain to be like the empire, and it's just like we lost Africa and we've lost, the colonies in the Australia, New Zealand, etc. I think the Tories are in a profound crisis. I wouldn't be surprised if Boris Johnson makes his move for the Tory leadership. Cameron is to blame for losing this. Clearly the knives are out for Cameron down south. Insofar as where it leaves the Tories in Scotland, well, look, the Tories were against the Scottish Parliament. We had it. They lived with it. There are, 16% of people in Scotland who vote Tory. They'll probably continue. My attitude, this is a pluralist democracy. There are people right of centre in Scotland. Goes without saying, if the Tories continue in a different form, I wouldn't be surprised by it, but it is a defeat for them.
But yeah, they would find a new guy. Those kind of policies would find a new outlet.
Yeah,
I think that's what Anna Sassan was saying last night.
Yeah,
I suppose this little local thing that we're having here, this local referendum in Scotland, does have profound implications, not just for Britain, but Europe in terms of the Flames and the Walloons and the Catalonians, the Galicians.
Yeah.
What about further afield? What about sort of in geopolitics, as George Robertson was want to talk about in terms of it being cataclysmic? What do you see if you point your mind there for a second?
I think, a yes vote is a social democratic and socialist choice by the people of Scotland. That's what we have to say, that if the yes campaign is offered a left of centre political set of values and views and objectives and promises, and they're voted for, then that's a marvellous thing for me. That's the end of 20 years of defeat for the working class. We get beaten by the miners, beaten by Thatcher's election, one attack after another. We get beat. In effect, New Labour was, as far as I'm concerned, a defeat for working people because the Labour Party went further to the right. And it's almost like saying the years of defeat are now over. We are saying that we want to see public ownership, redistribution of wealth, removal of Trident, a fair crack of the whip, a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, proper trade union legislation, all of that.
Yep.
Then that reverberates around the world, quite frankly, because the whole world has been moving in the other direction. The corporations think that they're omnipotent, they're untouchable, they've got a hegemony, they rule the roost and nobody dare stand up to them.
Yep.
And we, Scotland, 5.2 million, stuck in the middle of the North Sea, up here at the top of the European continent, has had the temerity to say, do you know what? We choose to move in another direction. Corporations are welcome here, but they have social responsibilities. They must pay taxes, they must treat people well. We want to see a high wage, high quality public service economy like they have in Scandinavia, and we'll take best practice from those parts of the world where we think they do things well. We'll then embark, won't we, in a process, a pluralist democratic process of writing a written constitution.
Tell me more about that. There's an interest in, I've got an interest in that because I've been involved in the Constitutional Commission. What do you think would happen? So there's a yes vote and the parties fall and the leaders fall where they may. But in terms of the constitutional process, what then happens?
Well, the Scottish Government's put out a bill saying we're looking for 1,000 flowers to bloom. let everybody give us their point of view and what the Constitution should involve. And it's maybe the first exercise we have to do is explain what a Constitution is. It's not a manifesto, it's not a wish list, it's about enshrining your values and saying this is what we're saying. The Constitution enshrines the values of equality, an end to exploitation, that the wealth of the country should be evenly shared, that those that are in greatest need are served best of all. And I think we can enshrine those essential social democratic values in a constitution, and importantly, put behind it that kind of enforcement that says these aren't just values that are abstract, that just remain nice wishful thinking and language that's very flowery, written by the marker or something, but has no meaning. They have to be enforced. They have to say, if you don't have these rights, then you're entitled to legal redress, compensation for those who would seek to deny you them. And I think in the process of that, I certainly intend to put in my submission to this process. There's no great hurry. It'll be taking months, and I hope 5.2 million put their point of view in, and the Scottish Government's to be congratulated for saying this will be a widespread, open consultation, and surely our aim would be to get even more people replying to that consultation than applied to the consultation they put out about independence, remember, which broke all the rules. And all the hundreds of thousands of people who downloaded a white paper when they never even knew what a white paper was before, That's what we've unleashed here. That's what the last 2 years has been out, that electricity, energy. We've released a volcano.
Absolutely, and sort of shaping that lava is an important aspect of it. How would you imagine that would happen within the existing Yes coalition? Would that be maintained to support that, or would there be a new protocol established?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of said to Yes activists who are asking what happens when we win and we get a Yes vote, and I kind of semi-flippantly says, well, when we get a Yes vote, Friday you can have 2 weeks R&R down at Rossi, and then you're back in ranks 2 weeks later, because with the job of work we have to do starts after the 18th, after the 19th. Not really a message people who have given their all and are exhausted.
Well, you do. You still got another 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
we have another 2 years to go.
Yeah, I'm the only person in Scotland who'd like to see this continue for another 2 years. And I realise how odd that makes me sound. But it's been a joy to be part of. This has been the best. I've been active in politics. Very fortunate to be an active socialist for 35 years. The last 2 years have been the best by miles.
And why is that?
Just because you're working with people, you're speaking to mass audiences, everybody's got an opinion about politics. That's the worst thing for an activist. People don't care. I don't have opinion one way or the other. Now I'm standing at the bus stop the other day there, waiting in the 31 to come downtown, and a woman comes up to me. I know her for the scheme in the inch. I know her because her kids go to the same school as I do, different year and that, so I know her face. She comes over, and I'm thinking she's going to ask me when the next 31 is due, right? And she comes over and she says to me, I think we should have our own currency. And I thought that was fantastic, because she's got an opinion on everything. She's got an opinion on the EU, she's got an opinion on the currency, she's got an opinion on pensions, she's got an opinion on NATO, she's got an opinion on a republic.
She doesn't just drink tea and do the dishes.
She doesn't just ask when's the next 31 due, right? That's fantastic. For activists, we're looking for people to have political opinions. Clearly I think as human beings we like it when people agree with us. But, it doesn't upset me if people don't agree with me, which is probably lucky as a socialist. It's not everybody always agrees with you, right? But that's a fantastic thing for democracy. It's a fantastic thing for civics. It's a fantastic thing for political activists. And that's what I mean by saying I hope that continues. I hope people don't just say, well, no, I'm just going to leave it to politicians, whatever they are. I'm not a politician, I'm a political activist, and I happen to think, though politicians are lowly regarded, and rightly so, because they're seen as people would sell their granny.
At Westminster, not so much Holyrood.
Yeah, whereas a political activist is highly regarded because, without them, nothing changes. Activity, ideas have got to be on a transmission belt. They've got to be taken from somewhere and implemented. And those tens of thousands of anonymous, volunteers, unpaid political activists, they're very much the fabric of Scotland and our society, and I believe there's a widespread respect for them.
Kevin McKenna said at the weekend that he had never felt much more easier in his skin as a Scotsman in this period, because I think the things you're describing, the energy, all the different parts talking to each other, and the hope and possibility. You know that we're doing a live show on Thursday evening from 10 through to to 6, maybe 7, depending how the counts go.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be happy to have you come and join us on the couch if you can make it for
I'll be
commentary
delighted if I can.
between your Sky stints and Japanese TV
Yes, I'll
stints and your
be
Belgian
on Sky from 3
stints.
to 4 in my pyjamas.
He's in his jammies, he's got a onesie.
Yeah, but I tell you what, I'm really proud of Scotland now. There are television crews and people, visitors coming from all over the world. I was in the Meadows for a flash mob thing we had on Sunday when I met you.
Yes.
And it's fantastic. You say to people, have you been to Scotland before? No, I've never been here before. I arrived Friday, I'm going to stay for a week. And I say, you couldn't have picked a better time to come. Impossible. It's the most exciting time in our history. And I'm proud that these film crews and visitors from abroad are coming and they're finding a country engaged, passionate about it. I was with a woman for the Basque Country, a journalist yesterday, and she's saying, but people don't really demonstrate that they're engaged and their passion, their excitement. He says, well, that's maybe a Northern European reserve, but you watch them on Friday, we know how to party, we know how to celebrate, we know how to score goals as far as that's concerned, you know, and I think I'm proud of what Scotland must look like to the rest of the world. It's not that side of our culture and our country that we're less happy about, you know, the sectarianism or the sometimes incipient racism or backwardness or ignorance that is there, and we have to, you know, address it.
Yeah.
But we're demonstrating to the world we're a country engaged. We're as engaged in politics in Scotland. I don't believe this is hyperbole. We're as engaged in politics in our way today as the people in the Gaza Strip are, as people in Syria are, and the Ukraine are, and anywhere else in the world. And I don't ever believe, and I'm sure you don't, we Scots are no better than anybody else.
No.
But we're no worse.
Absolutely.
We're not inferior to anybody.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is we're setting an example for democratic debate. Be passionate about it, take a side, get thoroughly engaged, but we've done it respectfully, democratically. Not a bullet was fired, one egg was wasted. But you know, this has been an example to the world. We're not looking for brownie points, but we can be proud of this.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very useful point to draw this talk to a close, Colin. Thank you very much. It's been inspirational. Your energy levels and Jim's energy levels and Jonathan's.
Well, I get them from Jim Stretch.
Yeah, he gets them from Jim Stretch. Colin Fox, thank you very much for joining us today.
Nice to meet you.
Take
Pleasure.
care.